I just wanted to say I've been reading two of your books. I've been reading The Mordecai and I've been reading Monsters and Misfits, and I love them both. And honestly, it's been hard to put down Monsters and Misfits. I'm like, I have to go do chores, but I could just read another short story right
Oh, that's
now.
thank you so much for saying that. I don't have a lot of people actually picking up Monsters and Misfits. I don't know why. My horror sells a lot less than my historical fiction, but thank you for saying that. That just made my week.
I'm so impressed with the craft of your horror. It is really engaging in a way, like with the Mordecai. It's set in the Middle Ages, and it seems, from what I know of your biography, you have a very solid basis in history, and it seems like you can get that from the story from the novel as well. But not just that, it like the horror aspects are very descriptive, but like very relatable what these characters are going through, even though it's set in the 1300s, and I am loving it.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so glad. Thank you. I don't really hear a lot about my horror because, like I said, I tend to focus on the historical fiction. But yeah, I'm thrilled. Thank you. Because I had so much fun writing them. Like I was still a fairly new writer. I'd only written one historical fiction novel, and I went through a massive zombie phase. I guess we'll get to how I got to this, but God, for decades, massive, massive zombie. Um, and so I decided I had to write a zombie novel. And at that point, I had a history degree and I was interested in history. So I thought, what if? And the funny thing is that the character, Brother Maurice, he's actually, his name is from someone I used to work with. And the town he's from, Montgomery, is the town that my husband was brought up in. So when he talks about the town layout, it's actually a place in Wales. So I like to use a lot of, and there's someone in there that's, I think his name is Maximus or something, and he has a sister called Jess. That's my husband and his sister. So I like using my friends and family and stuff in my books. They always say don't make a writer angry because they'll put you in a book. And yeah, absolutely will do.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. My name is Sarah, and with me is my lovely co host, Nenya.
Hello.
And you're listening to Horror Slash Stories. This week, author Kelly Evans is joining us to talk about the 1954 classic film Creature from the Black Lagoon. Kelly Evans is a historical fiction author with a bit of historical horror thrown in. Her main horror novels take place in England during the Black Death. Is it a zombie or the Black Death? Who can tell? When not writing, Kelly indulges her love of horror by watching one of the hundreds of really bad B movies she owns and eating popcorn. A lot of popcorn. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, I love my popcorn. Absolutely. I will actually plan a movie night and have the popcorn on standby and have the movies and but yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's fantastic being here.
You mentioned in your bio the Mordecai, your historical horror novel takes place in England during the Black Death. Is it a zombie or the Black Death? How did the idea for this novel come together? What was the inspiration?
Oh wow. Okay, so this was before COVID because once COVID hit, I became sort of like I was asked onto a lot of podcasts and I'll explain why in a second. So I'm the only person in my family who really throws themselves into history and also throws themselves into horror. None of my relatives understand it. Like I decorate my porch, I go nuts. The neighbors don't understand it. But I have a history degree and I've always liked the medieval period. And then for some reason, I think I read a historical fiction about someone who went back in time, and it was during the Black Death, and they managed to catch the plague. And if I think of the book, I'll say it. But I thought, well, that would be interesting because zombies have, and if anybody, we always say if the FBI looks at my search history, it was for books. It wasn't anything else. So I was looking at body farms and I was looking at stages of decomposition and stuff like that. And then I was also researching the Black Death and all that kind of stuff, and I threw them together. But the thing that I did was I researched everything. So the diseases, the way the Mordecai look with regard to their decomposition, the main character, Brother Maurice, where he is, where he goes, all of it is 100% accurate. So it sort of started me further on the historical fiction side, but I really still really like the horror. I just really like. There's a scene in it where a girl has to have part of her leg amputated, which spoiler, and that's actually completely accurate. Like it all happened that way.
Mhm.
So yeah, the main character, Brother Maurice, I was working with someone whose name was Maurice, and people called him Mo, and he knew that I was an author, and he was like, "Well, why don't you write another book of horror?" And I said, "Okay," and I'm going to use you. You're going to be Brother Maurice, and we joked about it for a little while, and I thought, you know what, I'm really going to do this. So that's how that book came about.
I think it is an excellent zombie novel, and I really think that people should check it out because, especially, I know new season of The Last of Us just came out, so people who are fans of The Last of Us who love a good zombie experienced. What do we have? 28 years later is coming out soon. You're gonna love this novel as well, and also with monsters and misfits, it seems like you draw a lot of historical detail into that as well. I've read through Snowflake actually.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's where I am. I'm in the monsters section.
okay,
But with Bedlam, seems like there's a lot of historical detail
yeah.
drawn into
Yeah,
that.
once again, I did a lot of research for that, just because like Bedlam is an actual place, and the things that happened, without giving too much away, the story kind of refers to, oh, this person was strapped to a wall, or this person was, and those are all examples of things that actually happened in this hospital, and I don't, I don't mean to make fun of it, and I don't mean to take it lightly. It was a place where they thought they could just put people who for a variety of reasons. If you were epileptic, you were having fits, they might put you there. If you were, if you, I don't know, if you're ill in a certain way, or, there were so many excuses for putting women in these places, like reading too
Yeah.
much and, having opinions. So I don't mean to make fun at all of what actually happened in that building. But it
And I don't
was,
think you did.
no, well, it was I kind of I'm hoping we got a little bit of revenge there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just couldn't not write about it because it is one of the most famous places in England.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really seems like it's a story. It seems like with Bedlam, and I this is one thing I want to know more about as well with Bedlam and with the first story, which I'm struggling to recall the name, but that's the story with the house.
Oh, the Jack the Ripper one. Okay.
Yes. In both of those stories, it seems like the building has a life of its own.
Yeah, it's funny you point that out. Hadn't actually realized that before, but yeah, I guess I went through a phase where I was writing stories from a different point of view. So instead of the main character's point of view, I mean, a lot of like I lived in England for nearly 20 years, and there's so many buildings there that have seen so much. Like they've seen 1,000 years worth of history, and I'm not suggesting that people imprint on buildings and ghosts and stuff like that. But there's just looking at it from the building's point of view, from a storytelling point of view, you could you could get a lot more in. You had sort of like your omniscience, so the building knows what's going on in any of the rooms, which helps the story. It also knows its own history, so you can fall back on that. It also, knows what's going on around the neighborhood. So there's a lot of material you can use for using a building or anything. I think there was a movie, and I really don't remember the name. It was about a violin, and it told the story through the violin's point of view and all the owners it had.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I know that sounds really familiar.
Is it the red?
It's like
Is it the red violin or something
I
like
want to
that?
say it's the red violin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an example of like there's really good storytelling there because the violin sees everything. So yeah, my buildings see everything. They know what's going on, the good and the bad. So yeah, it's actually kind of fun writing it from a different point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, and I liked the way with Bedlam, like the building and the patients kind of got their justice a little bit.
Yeah,
They got their
that's
revenge.
what I'm hoping. If there are any ghosts floating around out there and any of them have anything to do with Bedlam, then there you go. You're welcome. I did my best.
And my last thing I'll say before we move on to the formal questions was just I love the poetry that you've included in Monsters and Misfits. I
Thank
think it's
you.
really cool, and it's creepy too.
Thank you so much for saying you like the poetry because horror poetry is like fairly rare. There's not a lot of it around. And I started writing the poetry because I got inspired by a German dentist's book in the late 1800s. It's called Struwelpeter. It's just Strewwel, Peter. And basically, he wrote it to teach his young patients how to behave properly. But they're horrific stories. There's one kid who keeps playing with matches, and they end up catching on fire and dying. There's another kid who is playing with the tablecloth, and he ends up tipping the table over, and all the knives go into him. It's like, oh my God! And I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And when we were in England, there was a troupe of musicians who actually performed it and did like the plays and everything, and it's awesome. If you have a chance to look at it, it's incredibly strange and weird and wonderful. But I took some inspiration from that and started writing horror poetry, and then it just kind of went from there. I don't do it very much anymore. Um, I started. Actually, I did used to do it fairly early on, but it was mostly making fun of things. Like I'd write haiku about my sandwich. I wrote an ode to the little squishy guy I had on my desk. Just nonsense, absolute nonsense. But thank you so much for saying that. That's great.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What attracted you to the horror genre, and what is your horror origin story?
Okay, well, I'm in Canada, so I grew up in Ontario, and went to school there. Went to university, got my history degree, and actually like a comparative religion degree. So the religion, you'll see that it actually shows up in quite a few of my novels. Um, I moved to England. I was a project manager and a business analyst for finance, which was so vastly different from what my degrees were. But I managed to. It was the 90s. You could still climb up and get these sorts of positions. So I was a project manager for trading floors, for software for trading floors. And then we moved back to Canada. I worked for a few more years. And then I decided to become a full-time author. So I have a desk downstairs. I have my books, and I'm actually doing this full time now, which is like just the dream. It's absolutely the dream. With regard to the horror, okay, so I got into horror because of a comic. I was about 12 years old, and my dad had a hardback book about the origins of comic books, and it only went up to about the 70s. So all the stuff that happened in the 80s and all that kind of stuff, it wasn't in there. But I used to love reading through it, and there was one story in there. It was like Tales from the Crypt, which later became a famous set of comics. It was like the Crypt Keeper, and every week he'd tell you a different story. So there was one of those stories, and it was kind of horrible, but I did like it didn't really bother me. So that's it was someone was playing around and they ended up killing a baby cat, and the mother came and got revenge. And they happened to be in a big scary castle, so he got into the Iron Maiden, and the cat pushed it closed on him, and then the blood came trickling out. And
Cat revenge. We love it.
yeah, and I just absolutely loved it. I had also started getting into Stephen King when I was at summer camp because summer camp you have to read creepy stuff. So one of the girls there in my cabin brought I think it was Skeleton Crew, which she was reading stories to us at night with like by the flashlight. So really creepy and but that's yeah. So novels and comic books are basically how I got into this. I now have expanded my collection. Whenever I see a new collection or a new binding of Tales from the Crypt or, The Witch's, all of that, I have tons of them on my bookcase.
You've already kind of answered our next question, but like, would you say that you scare easily? And also, what do you think makes something scary and why?
Okay, so I don't scare easily with movies or TV shows. Having said that, I just to cut a long story short, when I'm working at my office at night, that we have a door going leading out to our deck, and it's a full glass, like it's a full window. And I chose this because I thought that'll be nice. It'll bring in lots of sunlight, nice in here. At nighttime, it's freaking creepy as heck. I sit with my back to the door, and if I'm working on, I'm a described video writer, so I'll kind of go into that in a minute. And I work on horror shows when I do this. And right now I'm working on a horror show, and I'm working at like 11 o'clock at night because I'm kind of a night owl, and I can see like dark on this side of me, and the door's behind me, and I'm like typing. Yep, tippity tap. Okay, check behind me. What was that noise? Okay, that was the cat. Keep going to work. Like it's just, I just, the other thing, my my basement. I mean, most basements are pretty creepy. Ours isn't finished, and the main overhead light went out, so you have to actually cross a dark room to get to the other light. And I've just read too many things with basements, and I know logically my brain is going, "There's no zombies in there. Like there's no dead children in there. You know, there's a little children ghost." But there's a part of me, I don't know, lizard stem that's going, "Get out, get out, get out, get out quick." So that's the kind of thing that kind of scares me. I mean, I've got some phobias. I don't like water, stuff like that. But yeah, I can end up scaring myself just from the imagination. Just like, yeah, there's nothing on the deck. There's nothing on. Oh wait, no. Okay, no, there's nothing on the deck. It just, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, because I've read so many books and watched so many movies, I can draw from like a million different scenarios to place into my brain at that point.
That is very relatable.
Yeah.
Mm.
This next question is a question for all of us. So I'll start with our guest. Have you seen any other horror movies recently?
I watched. There's a Russell Crowe film. I'm not sure. I think it came out recently. It was called The Pope's Exorcist. I
Okay.
watched that, and I don't know. I was talking to my husband about it. I was like, the Pope said, I said I can't think of any horror movies, and he said, well, The Pope's Exorcist, and I said, well, that's not a horror movie, and he went, well, yeah, there's like blood and demons and killing. And like, okay, yeah, okay, so that, yeah, so yeah, I saw that, and I mentioned earlier that I'm a described video writer, so let me just explain what that is. If you're visually impaired and you're watching TV, there's a little voice that tells you what's going on when the actors aren't speaking. I write the scripts and then the voice actors read what I've written. And at the moment, I'm working on a horror story that I'm not allowed to tell you what it is. But because I'm working on that horror story, I tend not to watch a lot of horror because I don't want, like, I get into one voice when I'm doing a particular, and this is a series, and I don't want that voice to move or shift at all per episodes because it is noticeable for the people that are using the service. Yeah, so because I'm working on just a particularly just really gross movie right now, I'm not watching anything. I'm not watching anything else.
Well, that's a fascinating project. That sounds, yeah, what a cool job.
Yeah, well, you mentioned, we were back to zombies again. There was Daryl Dixon, the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon.
Mm.
I did
Yeah.
the described video script for the first season of that, so I can
Oh,
tell you
cool.
that. I've done a show called I think it's a Canadian show. It's called Shutter. No, it's called Slasher. Sorry, and it's like 8 episodes of people getting killed. It's just really, but that was a few years ago. But yeah, I do get some creepy stuff.
Nenia, how about you? Have you seen any other horror movies recently?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't watch a lot of movies, but I have been reading some horror novels. I'm reading Never Whistle at Night, which is a omnibus of native horror stories inspired by folklore. I'm reading It Waits in the Forest by Sarah Doss, which is a Caribbean folk horror. And I'm reading The Bee King by Matilda Zeller, which is a horror fantasy by a native author that kind of has like Bluebeard vibes and feminine rage.
I like the Bluebeard
It's really
vibes. The
good.
Bluebeard vibes caught me. Yeah, that's awesome.
Those all sound awesome. I want to hear more about all of them. And I love that you're so prepared for folk horror season, which is our
I
next
just love
season.
it.
I'm so excited. Um, Last night, Ben and I watched The Menu, which have either of you heard of it or seen it?
I've got it.
I love that
Yeah, I
movie.
downloaded it and I just haven't. I kind of wanted to be in a specific mood to watch that one. And a lot of the time we watch movies while we're eating dinner, and I was like, no, just no.
Yeah, it's not one for while you're eating dinner. I had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
It stressed me out, which,
Mhm.
sometimes in a good way. There are some horror movies. I saw another horror movie recently, Saint Maud. Do you know about that one?
Oh, I haven't seen that one, no.
I don't recommend
Oh,
it. uh,
okay.
or that one stressed me out in a bad way. That
Oh,
one I do not recommend and I did not enjoy. Sorry to the film creators. But this movie, The Menu, stressed me out in a way of just like, they did a good job creating tension, but it was also humorous. I mean, Nenya, you've seen it too. What did you think about it?
I think it's the perfect example of like what marketers are calling like high concept horror because it's not just about like the killing. I feel like similar movies are kind of like Knives Out and Ready or Not, where in addition to all the people like getting killed, there's also like social commentary, and I really like that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
I rewatched American Horror Story Coven. That's not really horror, but there's some kind of gross bits in it. I watched that a couple of weeks ago. Um, and no, there was something else, and I don't remember what it is now. But yeah, I kind of like that. I like the show up maybe until the fifth or sixth season, then it just got weird.
Mm.
American Horror Story. Yeah, yeah,
I'd consider that horror. It's like gothic horror.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Although there's one with, and I don't know if this is a politically correct term, but there's one with sort of hillbillies where
Mhm.
they kind of eat people, and that was kind of
Ooh,
gross.
yeah. What a trope.
So you are, as we have established, a author of historical fiction, historical horror, and horrific poems and short stories. What is your experience writing horror? Like, what got you into that genre specifically, and how do you engage with fear on the page? Little rhyme for
Oh,
you.
nice. I like that. Yeah, I actually kind of feel like I'm gonna start writing poetry again. Okay, so not to be tongue in cheek, but one of the things that surprised me was how little my family were surprised when I started writing horror. Like no one really batted an eye. It was just, it was like, okay, yeah, she's doing it again. The other thing is I noticed the lack of women and the lack of women's voices in horror. There was kind of like a huge, let's say from the 60s until almost like the 80s or 90s, it was men. It was like dominated by men. There were a few people that were sort of like Agatha Christie wrote murder, but that wasn't really horror, you know what I mean? And yeah, even
Yeah.
with Mary Shelley in, way in the past, women were virtually visible with horror books. So when I started thinking about it, I was thinking, okay, I would like more voices. I would like to see more. So I'm going to try and contribute to that. Um, there's also very strong feelings about women in horror these days, and I don't know how much you know about stuff that's gone on over on social media over the past few years, but a lot of women have been made to feel bad, been made to feel intimidated, been forced to close accounts. There are like a number of very specific things that we just there's not enough time to go through what's happened. But yeah, there's still just so much backlash from a certain group of people with women writing
Yeah.
horror. It's always like, well, women can't write horror. It's like, well, why not? Of course we can. And the next question was, how do I engage with fear? I try to keep it simple. I try to use things that I know people will be afraid of, no matter what period. So if I'm writing about the 1300s, anybody over the last 2,000, 3,000, 5, 10,000 years has fear. We've got the fight or flight response, and the flight is because we are afraid of something, get out of there. But there's also things like the unknown, the dark. So a bump in the night, if you're alone in the house, is going to freak out anybody. Doesn't matter what period you're from. So I try to keep very, very sort of simple themes. I try to use all the senses because what a lot of authors do, or many authors do, is sometimes they won't use like smell or they won't use taste. And you're reading the Mordecai, and I don't know where you're up to, but there's some stuff in there that's like I use the ears and I use, yeah, and the horror that I write, there's a lot of like the horror, like the zombie, there's a lot more leeway on what I can get away with, like some of the attack scenes, and people turning into zombies, etc. Whereas if I'm writing, I wrote a novella. It was sort of an homage to Mary Shelley, and it involved Nikola Tesla and Dr. Frankenstein's great niece. And I researched that as well, and because I know Dr. Frankenstein fictional. He didn't have any kids of his own, but I know his brother did, so that's how I worked this in. And it's horror, but I had to pull back on it an awful lot because there's a lot of science involved in it as well. So yeah, it's just keeping it simple, not going overboard because wow, yeah, I've read some horror books that are just like, okay, like you're on the third page of someone being attacked, and it's like, oh, okay, can we get to the end of this? Um, yeah, but that's pretty much it. It's just tapping into what I know people are going to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And like going back to your first piece about the erasure of women in the genre, I thought that was really interesting considering the movie you picked out because I'm reading a book called The Lady of the Black Lagoon by Mallory O'Meara. And it talks about how Millicent Patrick, the costume designer from The Creature of the Black Lagoon, all of her work was basically erased from history because of a jealous colleague. And in the book, there's this great line. I was actually pinging it to Sarah. I was like, I'm so excited for tomorrow's like podcast because like there's this line about how women need to fight monsters in horror because it allows them a way to like sublimate from like the everyday horrors of like being a woman in society or like being femme or non-binary in society. Like, and it sounds like a lot of your work is really doing a lot to combat that. I'm so excited. Sarah's had nothing but good things to say about Mordecai.
I've I kind of copped out a little bit, and I'm writing like my main character in that book, in the follow up book, is a man, so I'm writing it from the point of view of a man, but I do have women, sort of important women in the story as well. And when I switch over, like I probably still keep writing horror, but when I switch over to my historical fiction, my main topics are women. I take famous women from history who are in the footnotes of the men's stories. I take them out of the bottom of the page. I tell their story because a lot of them were just as helpful, controversial. They did a lot. They helped to. It wasn't just the men's story. So yeah, every single one of my historical fiction books is about a particular and a real woman from history. So yeah, I really I try to recommend that book to everybody actually because when I found it and I've loved the movie for a long time and I read that I was like, oh, that's awesome. That I love this movie even more now.
I really love about what you've been doing with your horror, just when you were talking about how you engage with fear on the page. I feel you don't pull your punches. This when you were talking about how you engage the various senses, you don't pull your punches, but at the same time, it's not torture porn. It's not
Mm.
gratuitous. It's like there's a purpose. It's not and the purpose is not just gore on gore on gore. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, so I like to have a story with my horror. So I absolutely because I'm a, I well, my boss at the Described Video place called me a storyteller, which I thought was just the best compliment ever. But yeah, I have to have a solid story, because I like the story part of it. I like that there's got to be something you could put in all the gross bits, but there has to be something that connects it all. And yeah, I people who read zombie books kind of have an expectation, especially now after so many zombie movies. So like if you go right back to the first the George Romero movie, and now I'm forgetting what it's called,
Oh, Dawn
the
of the
Dawn of the
Dead?
Dead, yeah, there aren't a lot of really gross bits. Like it's not
No.
as bad as stuff that we actually have on television these days. So the stuff we have today probably wouldn't even have rated R or not shown at all. So since the movies and the social media and everything has updated, there are now more and bigger and grosser expectations for when you're writing a zombie book. So yeah, I put a lot in there that yeah, I think Actually, no, I don't think I have. I have trigger warnings on some of my books, my historical fiction. Just I don't put trigger warnings on my horror because if you read a zombie book, you know what you're getting into.
It's delightfully horrific.
Delightfully horrific. I love that.
I was just gonna say, I think Kelly is right that there's like been a shift between zombies being portrayed as like kind of like a disaster movie towards like more of a monster movie. Because I feel like the early ones, they were very much like a pandemic, kind of like the Black Plague she was saying in Mordecai. Whereas like now it's more of like you want monsters and gore and slashing.
Yeah, there has to be. I think I don't know what the I'm sure someone's done the research. If I go and look at like the ratio of kills in an early zombie movie compared to the ratio in like let's say an hour long TV show, I'm sure we've got more. I'm sure we're winning on the ratio of kills part. But sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes it's just I don't know. Like I said, I did the Daryl Dixon one, and I didn't watch all of the seasons of Walking Dead, but I got through the first couple, and there seemed to be a lot more now. Even from the beginning of that series, there seemed to be a lot more. And there was a couple in there that was like, okay, great, what did that accomplish? Like it like okay, it got a zombie out of your way, but that was it. You know, well, you could have just walked around him. So there were a couple of gratuitous scenes, but yeah, it was. I think there's a lot more expectation these days, and Lord knows where it's going to end up because we're just getting worse and worse. You mentioned the what was it? The torture horror.
Oh yeah, torture porn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do not like that. I watched. I think it. What was his name? It was a movie called Hostel.
I've never seen it, but I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
It's the only torture porn thing I've seen. I can picture the director, and I can't even remember his name. It's no, I just can't. It's just not the type
Mhm.
of thing for me. I don't know. I'm kind of I don't want to feel like I'm like a snob or I have higher standards than other horror people. But yeah, I'm just gonna say no. I just don't like that kind of thing. It's just not for me.
You're in good company. I don't think either of us do either.
Yeah,
No.
I mean I can watch like there was a movie there's a movie called Orca, way back. I think it was in the 80s, and there was
I've seen that one.
there's a famous actress in it called Farrah Fawcett. She used to be like a model, and
Oh my God.
and she has a broken leg, and you see the scene of the orca coming up and taking her leg, and you see the cast in its mouth as it like goes down to the bottom of the water, and it's like okay, that's like, and that was like right at the very end, so that's how tame we were back then.
That movie really disturbed me because the orca wanted revenge on its family. That they hurt the orcas in the beginning was
Yeah,
really disturbing to me, and I never got over it.
Mm,
And I think the orca was justified.
yeah.
yeah.
We're finding a lot of that in movies. I just, from a side thing, I'm a bit of a comic book freak, and when the Avengers, I agreed with the bad guy. Wipe out half the people, that would solve a lot of problems. I mean, I sound terrible saying that, but it was like they were so. It was kind of hard not to side with him. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why I like the really old Hollywood movies so much. I like siding with the monsters, including the creature, because there's something
Mm.
about the original Universal movie monsters like there's Dracula, like the Bela Lugosi Dracula, and you've got Frankenstein. You've got the creature, you've got the mummy. There's something noble about them. I don't know. There's something like you kind of understand their point of view, even though there's less going on than a modern movie, for example. You get really drawn out scenes and stuff. But for those movies, they actually, I don't know, there's something sophisticated about the monsters, even though it was like really low, like no science at SFX at all. Yeah, I don't know, I kind of side with the monsters in those cases as well.
I think that is going to be really relevant to our discussion about this film in particular, but also is a great transition to our next question, which is you profess to be a lover of old B movies, and you propose today's film, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Can you tell us a little bit about what draws you to this horror subgenre and why you chose today's film?
Okay, so I'm going to take Creature out of the B movie sort of like category because at early horror you had like the universal monsters, the ones that everybody knows, and then more and more people were making horror movies, and then instead of just being horror movies and like the really nice lighting and the acting, they started representing society. So there was more of a social message. The George Romero movie, it was sort of a racial message going out there. But in the 50s, for example, I think we were afraid of like nuclear disasters and things like that. So as a result, you got a lot of science fiction movies. You got a lot of nuclear disaster movies where, like Godzilla, for example, is a result of a nuclear disaster. You got giant ants, giant rabbits, giant spiders, like a giant woman, a giant man. Like there's just like there were it would like all the movies were reflecting like everybody's fear of what nuclear power could do. And then there was also I'm not going to say immigration, but there was like a Red Scare, and there was like certain people who should be here. And that's when we started getting the alien invasion movies. And then everybody was like, oh, the person from Mars. Like everybody was making alien invasion movies. And then they kind of went quiet for a while. I think during the 80s, when you sort of the slasher movies started coming up, they were just they weren't they weren't commenting on anything really. I mean, there's movies commenting on them now, but yeah, they're not really commenting on anything. And up until that point, I don't think there were any horror movies ever nominated for any awards other than maybe sound and makeup. There were like no actors, no directors, nothing. And then I think just over the last sort of 10 or 20 years ago, we've done a complete turnaround and we're actually starting to get into the social commentary horror movies again. So sorry, I went to a lot of detail there. So yeah, the B movies, the ones that actually make fun of themselves, the ones before they started trying to push a message, they're great. I have a really warped sense of humor, so I just thought they were hilarious. They were great, and there are so many of them. If anybody wants to go and look for these movies, if they've got the Roku channel, do you guys get that?
Mm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Roku has hundreds of just really, really bad movies. Let me see. I came prepared, so
Fantastic.
just to give you an example, I've got like this box of, it's a 50 movie pack that one of my friends got me. It got to a point where people were sending me movies. A friend sent me Thanksgiving, because I was going through a phase where I was trying to get a horror movie for every holiday. But yeah, this has, let's see, Adam Age Vampire, let's see, Beast of Yucca Flats, The Monster Maker, The Killer Shrews. That's not a very good one, actually. I know that one. Let's see. There's Bluebird actually here. Night of the Living Dead. The World Gone Mad. The Monster Walks. Monster from a Prehistoric Planet. A Shriek in the Night. Yeah, they could take anything and make a movie out of it. Make it scary. Yeah, the one I was just watching was, I think, The Killer Shrews. And of course, someone was messing around with DNA and happened to make really, really giant shrews that the movie was so,
As you do.
yeah, the movie was so bad that you could tell that there was costumes on top of dogs. So when they're running around, like you could tell they're dogs.
Oh my God.
So I love that. I love that these people made this and they put their heart and soul into it. And they're obviously making fun of themselves at some point. Like they're no longer serious. But yeah, my sense of humor, I just love it. I could watch them all day. So then, yeah, so then moving to Creature, like I said, I don't consider that a B movie, but it's, yeah, one of the classics. It's interesting because, well, we already talked about Millicent, so we know, like, I learned after that she made the monster. But it's interesting because a lot of it is filmed underwater, which wasn't done a lot back then. And they had to really, really, really be careful because there was no green screen or there was no special effects. So any of the scenes underwater were all scenes underwater, like they actually did that. Just an aside, my husband and I were in California. We took the Universal tour that you get like behind what they call the movie lots. And we saw the spot where the creature, the Black Lagoon, came out of the water. And I was the only one going, wait, no, stop, I want to take a picture. I think the other thing I like about this is it respects the viewers. It respects the audience. There's a lot of science that's described in it. They actually talk about where they find a fossil of a hand with webbed bits in them. And they're like, okay, this is from a specific period in time. I did write it down. Where did I write it down? No, they actually do talk about the specific period about 400 million years ago where animals first started walking, they started leaving the water. So these guys had a theory about this, but when they're talking about it, and they go into a lot more detail than I am, it's all true. I looked it all up. Everything they say is true. They're not treating their audience like like idiots. And the scene does go on for quite a while, so you kind of have to pay attention. Believe it or not, the giant shrews, they also went through the science, and it went on for quite a while. And it was actually partially right. So yeah, one of the things I like about Creature is it respects the audience. It respects that you're going to know what they're talking about. It respects that this all makes sense because actually the storyline does make sense. Um, and I guess I don't know. It's recently it's been cleaned up, and it's been done so well that the black and white it's almost like a noir movie, like the just the shades of black and white. It's really really stunning to watch it now. And of course, I like the creature. I feel sorry for him, like I do with all the other ones. They catch him, they put him in a crate. I mean, come on, you got to be on his
Yeah.
side after that.
Very sympathetic monster.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good segue into our next question. You've mentioned that you're a fan of B movies, although you wouldn't consider Creature from the Black Lagoon to be a true B movie. So, if someone wanted to get into, say, like retro creature feature horror, what movies would you suggest?
Oh man, you heard me when I said I had a box of 50 all in one set, right? There's
Huh?
so many of them. It's so hard. One of the shows, okay, so it's a TV show. It started in the 80s and it went on for a little while. It's called Mystery Science Theater
Yes,
3000. And
I've
it
watched
makes
it.
fun, yeah, it makes fun of all the movies that I'm talking about. So I would suggest people find maybe one or two movies from a guy called Roger Corman, because he was very big with the. Actually, I think I might have some of his movies here. Let's find out.
Well, yeah, he was like the biggest name in like direct to VHS pulp back
Yeah,
in the day.
he did like I think like 500 movies or something. Okay, so he did Attack of the Giant Leeches,
Hmm.
Last Woman on Earth, Creature from the Haunted Sea. So he did a lot of these. So watch a couple of those. And there's another guy. There's another guy called Ed Wood, who there was a biographical movie made about him. Johnny Depp played him, and played him in a really weird way. So if you're looking up Ed Wood, I wouldn't recommend that movie. But do look for his movies. There's his most famous one is oh no, I forgot what his most famous one is. Oh, this is very embarrassing. Okay, if I think about it, why can't I think of it? Anyway, it's a very very small set, and he's got all the actors in like very basic outfits, and he has them running around a cemetery, but they keep running around the same tombstone. Like every time they run through the cemetery, it's exactly the same set. Why can't I remember this? This is driving me nuts now. Nope, can't remember it. It's gone. I was talking to my husband about it earlier today, though, if I remember it. So yeah, find something by Ed Wood. Oh, Plan 9 from Outer Space. That's the movie he did.
Oh,
And it's kind of a really famous one, not only for how bad it is, and not only because Ed Wood do it, but it. I don't know. It didn't do very well at the cinemas, but it's now like a cult classic. Like you have to watch that one. So that's Ed Wood, Roger Corman, and then jump into Mystery Science Theater because you'll kind of get to see the movies at the same time as having people just really tear them apart. Let's see. I would also recommend a Godzilla movie because that sort of is the main representative for the nuclear weapons are bad thing. Um, Probably the first one, just so you know what happens. They generally repeat the story of how Godzilla came to be in every single movie. And then towards the end, they just got really silly. Like we found out Godzilla was a woman, and she had a baby, and the baby was cute, and it was just like, no, no. But there's one, so Godzilla has all kinds of enemies. The one I actually like is there's a moth. There's a giant moth called
yes.
Mothra, and someone steals a little set of like really really teeny women who sing, they're twins, and takes them away. So Mothra protects the twins. So Mothra comes out and there's a fight, Godzilla and them. I'm Team Mothra. Just anytime it comes up on social media,
Yep.
Team Mothra all the way. And then yeah, that's basically anything you can find on the Roku channel because they just do a great job. But yeah, so what did we go through? So Roger Corman, Ed Wood, Mystery Science Theater, and a Godzilla movie. Sorry, that's four.
Fantastic. Well, you've given us some great recommendations just now. If you had to choose, and maybe you've already given us your list, but if you had to choose, what would be your top three horror movie or book recommendations in addition to the ones you've written?
Depending on the reasons, if we're looking for like I like the Alien franchise, but only the first like maybe 4 or 5 movies. I will watch the one with the Predator and the aliens in the giant pyramid
Hmm.
in where is it, Antarctica or something. But I like the original one. So I love Alien. It was genre busting. It was new, and Aliens possibly better. That's not something you say about part twos very often. Um, Jaws was also a really important movie, despite like it's unbelievable they actually got it filmed because the trouble with the mechanical shark was like it was breaking down every other scene. Oh, that's something else you can see at the Universal Studios tour if the shark comes up and tries to get you. Um, Again, The Exorcist, another one that's really bad. But I've got one that not a lot of people have heard of. It's called Ravenous, and the music is like incredible, and it's got an English actor in it who I really really like. Have you guys seen a show called Once Upon a Time? Okay, so you know the guy who plays Robert Carlyle plays the Mr. Gold, the Rumpelstiltskin. Okay, so he's in it. He's a lot younger, and it's truly bizarre. It's creepy, and it's weird, and hardly anyone knows about it. But yeah, I definitely recommend that one. And then the last one, there's a movie that came out. I think it was in the early '80s called When a Stranger Calls, and it's about, it may not be relevant now, but it was about a babysitter, and she was babysitting 2 kids, and she kept getting weird phone calls like, have you checked the children? Like all the time, have you checked the children? And I've babysitted in empty houses before, and I watched that movie when I was still a babysitter. It scared the heck out of me. Oh my God, it was so scary. I'm not going to ruin the end, just because, yeah, no. As far as books, It by Stephen King. I'm a big King fan. It, when I read it in university, I actually started reading it in my bedroom and then actually had to go out into the living room and sit with my parents because I was too scared. And you know the movie The Exorcist. The book is worse. It's better but worse. It's better but more graphic. Let's put it that way. Um, Funny story about that. I was about, I don't know, 10 or 11, and I pulled it off a shelf at my aunt's place and I was reading it. And my mom caught me, and she didn't say much. She took the book off of me and didn't tell me not to read it, and then put it back on the shelf. As soon as she left, I grabbed it again. I started reading it. So, but yeah, those would be my. I mean, there's so many. I've got like hundreds of books and like really bad ones to really really good ones. But yeah, that's probably a good set.
That's a good list.
But yeah, find Ravenous. The music is amazing, and Robert Carlyle is wonderful. But and yeah, there. Okay, I'll stop talking about Ravenous now.
We'll have to check it out. So, one of the things we do, we're moving on to discussing the movie, is we do a 60-second recap of the film. I would like to invite you, Kelly, as our guest, if you would like to try it out to do a 60-second recap of the film. Otherwise, Nenia or I can do it. We can flip a coin.
No, let me give it a go.
Okay, one moment. Let me pull up a little timer.
Oh wow, a timer.
No pressure. Okay, ready, set, go.
Scientists discover a fossil that they didn't know, a creature that they didn't know existed. It consisted of a hand with webbed fingers. They surmised that it was part of a mass exodus from the water during a particular period in Earth's history, about 400 million years ago, and they set off to find more fossils. What they didn't plan on finding was an actual example of the fossil still living in the water that they refer to as the creature of the Black Lagoon. They try and find it, they catch it, it gets away, hilarity ensues, and it does not have a happy ending.
You actually have 20 seconds left if there's anything else you want to add.
One of my favorite scenes in that movie is they're on the boat and there's one of those the little round windows, like I think they're called portals or something. And there's a scene where the creature walks past it, and all you do is you see like a bit of his legs. And for some reason, I love that scene. It just makes me laugh. It's
It was a
fantastic.
great scene. Okay, now we're at a minute. That's
Nice.
awesome job. You know what's funny is the reason we started the 60-second recap was originally when Maddie and I, my brother and I started the podcast, these were episodes were going to be like 20 minutes long.
Oh,
And we were
wow.
not going to talk about plot. We were going to talk about just like what made it scary. And that has completely changed. Now it's like an hour long and now we do talk about plot.
But it's
So
such a huge market. Like there's just you could go on forever talking about horror. Everybody has a different opinion. Everybody time and place makes a difference depending on some things I find scary when I was, 10, I don't find scary anymore. That kind of thing.
What would you say that the creature from the Black Lagoon contributes to the overall horror canon?
I don't know if it actually no, I think it fills a gap because a lot of the monsters are land, like they live on land. And I think this is one of the first ones, if not the first one, where they had a monster living under the water. And when you think about humans, we have things that live under the water that are not very nice, especially in Australia for some reason. And then most of us live on land. But yeah, up until that point, most of the filming and all the bad guys were on land. So that's why we go back to the stunning cinematography of the underwater shots. So I think it's there are things in the deep that you have to worry about now. So we're scaring you on the surface. Now you have to worry about what's underneath you when you're swimming.
I was really fascinated by the way it was the underwater filming as well. Just it seemed to me I have not seen a lot of older movies, and this I was really glad you picked this movie as one to watch because I probably wouldn't have watched it had we not been discussing it. And I actually really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really fascinating. And the more like, to this day, it's still striking. I think that there are still really solid horror elements. It's like the craft of the film, the cinematography, so impressive, the costuming, so impressive. But yeah, I was especially impressed by like the underwater sequences and that the shots that they got. And I think you can see the way that I think I can safely say it impacted Jaws, influenced Jaws later. And it is also not kind of an ambiguous horror movie in terms of just like the main characters are not really the good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else that I just realized about the movie is a lot of the time you hear the bad guy coming. Like you hear something. Freddy's slicing the wall and something's murmuring, Mummy's going, ugh. Because you can't hear this, it's underwater. I think the music plays a very important part in this movie as well.
Yeah.
It kind of, I mean, with the Jaws, it's famous. You know when the shark's coming because of the doo-doos noise. But this is sort of before that they weren't really using music as well as they possibly could do before it. But I think it actually plays a major part because then it kind of signals, well, there's something below your feet. You might want to be careful, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Nania, what did you think?
Okay, so I'm reading, as I mentioned earlier, The Lady from the Black Lagoon. And one of the things that I really liked in the movie was how artistically designed the costume of the creature was compared to like other B movie monster movies I've seen. Like you couldn't even see the seams in the costume, and it was like very unique and aesthetic. And when I was reading the book, it made a lot of sense for me why this was the way it was because I guess she was a Disney animator. She got scooped up right out of animation school because of the way she could draw action sequences. And she did the scene in Fantasia with Chernabog, the demon of the Night of Bald Mountain. And I had always admired the way the claws looked in that scene and like the way that he was so mobile and like the fluidity of the ghosts and how they almost moved like they were underwater, which, makes extra sense since it was a movie shot underwater. And so I feel like the fact that she started out as an animator and understood movement and motion and how to make that look beautiful really contributed to the movie in a way that I don't think we really saw until they started making those artistic movies that Kelly was talking about, like the artistic horror that started to win awards.
That's super cool.
I agree with all of that.
Okay, so again, another question for all of us. Was this movie scary? Why or why not? And I'm going to add something we've been kind of talking about to this question. How has what is scary in film changed since 1954? Because
Ooh.
if we didn't find this, like, if this movie was not scary to us, I mean, maybe it was, but that we've been talking about how things that we see on TV today are much more graphic and gory and intense than they were back when this film was shot. And I know that one of our friends was mentioning that Stephen King found this movie to be very scary. And I think that in it, the movie is referenced in the book It as being scary. So, yeah, Kelly, I'll start with you. Was this movie scary for you personally? Why or why not? And yeah,
It wasn't scary for me as a viewer, but as like a person who tried to place themselves in the movie, I'm afraid of water. So if I was like swimming on top of the water, I don't even think I could swim in that water because I have to see like right to the bottom. And there's a scene in it where he's swimming on his back right underneath the woman swimming on the top. And I think he touches her foot. It's like, nope, I just couldn't. If something touched me, no, I couldn't do it. I used to go camping up northern Canada, and there was uh, lakes with weeds, like just tons of weeds, and they just would brush against you, and it was like, oh no, I don't think so. So that part scared me because of the water thing. But no, I think it was I think it's fairly tame, like you said, compared to even what I grew up with. Like I was sort of there with the birth of slasher movies. So
yeah. Nania, was this movie scary for you? And why or why not?
I didn't think it was very scary. I thought it was more interesting than scary. I feel like there's been a shift in horror from like suspense to like wanting to convey feelings of disgust. And I prefer suspense. Hitchcock has this great quote where he's like, if you have a group of people talking and like a bomb explodes, like, the shock and disgust, it's horrific. But like, if you have a group of people talking and in the middle of the discussion, you cut to the bomb and there's a timer ticking down, then you have suspense and you're engaged because you know something that the characters don't know and that makes you invested. And I feel like old school horror has more of like that mindset to it, which I really like.
That's a really great quote and also a really good point. I think you totally are right about that, especially with this film where we're seeing, yeah, like this scene with the monster under the water. And we're seeing all of these shots of him, like the hand
Yeah.
coming, reaching for the woman.
So every time they're in the water, you're like, "Oh no, is this is this it?"
Yeah. Yeah. And I do not love being in the water. And I also think I would not enjoy being one of the actors on this.
yeah, that was I think part of it was done in Florida and part of it was done on the Universal set. And yeah, I couldn't. No, just could not.
Really impressive swimming skills, though.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, the guy in the costume under the water, he was amazing. The way he moved in that thing. I think it might be in the book or I picked it up somewhere, but apparently
Ricardo.
I should know his name as well. But apparently he couldn't sit down in the costume, so he had to like stand for 8 hours at a time.
Oh
And
my
like when he
gosh.
was, and they would like put a straw through it so he could drink and everything. But yeah, they really did put a lot into that.
Yeah. Okay, for me, was this movie scary? Why or why not? I found this movie actually scarier than I was anticipating it being. One of those reasons being I am uncomfortable being underwater, and there were a lot of underwater sequences that were beautiful, but it's just activates my spine. And then also, I think the scenes where the first attack scene, it is kind of an intense attack on those two assistants in the tent, and yeah, the monster attacks were kind of like pretty violent. So I think, yeah, and I think like Nenya said, there was a great development of tension. So I do think it was. I mean, like, is it the scariest thing I ever saw? No, but I do think you could say it's scary.
I think people that are comfortable in water are still afraid of something touching their foot when they're in the water. Like I think everybody has to be afraid of that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I just looked up who was in the suit. It's Rico Browning, and he was 6'3".
Wow.
That sounds really like I hope they paid him well.
Yeah,
I hope so
seriously.
too.
Yeah, he did such a fantastic job. And that's the other thing. If you had someone playing the creature who was like less, I mean, there's a different person who played the creature on land, but in the water, I mean, that's mostly where it is. And if there was someone who wasn't as good as him, like maybe the movements were a little more jerky, or maybe the way he just turned around in the water, it was so smooth. It was like no hesitation. Yeah, he did such a fantastic job.
My husband was he was not as patient with watching this movie. To quote him, he said something along the lines of, "It's amazing how a movie that is so action packed can be so boring."
Oh
But
God.
he was just like, "There's exposition in every shot and I just don't care." But he has poor taste. No, I'm just kidding. I love him. Um But I going back to the exposition in every shot, I think that is especially, not to say that film creators don't do this today, because I think that they do, but I think this was shot during a time where people really, like the people making the film you had to work with what you had. And also you're working with an audience that they're not going to be on their phones probably. I mean, we are today, but like they are going to be watching the screen and they're going to be paying attention to every detail. And so I was really, like I said, I was really impressed with the cinematography, but also with the way they had these performances underwater. Even those two main characters, who I think, whether their names David and Mark were the main characters. Both of them are, the actors are both named Richard, but um, their scenes underwater, and even the fact, noticing that they had, like, one was wearing darker shorts, one was wearing lighter shorts, so you could tell who was who underwater.
I think they're very good swimmers. I think you have the like what you call like the stunt man or the stunt person, and then you've just got the actors around the stunt person. But I think along like a while ago they actually, I don't know, I've heard of a lot of like old Hollywood stars sort of doing their own stunts. And I don't know if they had stunt people for underwater in this. I don't think they did. So I think
Wow.
the actors are like they're doing it, like they're under the water doing this. And they were so good. Like they were just how could you just have two actors that happen to be really good at swimming? Like they look so comfortable in the water.
Brings us to our next question, which is what do you think that the filmmakers were trying to say with this movie? And how did they convey, if you don't believe the movie was scary, if not fear, then a sense of like suspense?
Okay, well the music definitely sets the suspense, and they kind of get right into like they mentioned the two helpers in the tent who are sort of attacked, and that's the other thing. Tent zippers going down when you're inside it and there's something outside, freaky. So they kind of pulled that. Yeah, and it was quite a violent attack. So I guess they kind of set that up fairly early, and then with the exposition and the scenes and stuff, they kind of left you hanging for quite a while. So I kind of like that. I think it worked out really well. And now I'm sort of back to forgetting things. I've forgotten the question.
Oh, what do you think the message of the movie
Oh, the
was? Do you think the
message.
filmmakers were trying to say something?
Right. Like I said before, it was kind of before people were like trying to get messages across. Like Frankenstein don't bring people back to life. Like I'm not sure. Like, so I think though, if you do start to get into the messaging, I think it's an ecological thing. Like don't mess with nature.
Mm,
Be respectful of nature, no matter where you go. If you're out in the wild or something, trust your local guides. Be very respectful of where you are because nature might attack back.
yeah, for sure. What about you, Sarah?
That's a great question. It One of the things I'm circling around is just how sympathetic the monster was. And we've talked about how often in these monster movies the monster is sympathetic. But that really struck me, and it was not something that I anticipated, but he really wasn't a monster. He's really just the creature, or the gill man, and is only classified as a monster because we have this because he's not human, I guess. I don't know. Because he's a creature. But it really struck me the way, how critical the lens was, or the creators were, of these scientists who are coming to find out more about archaeology, about evolution, and they're throwing their cigarette butts in the water. In this, they're talking about how pristine this ecological area is and how well preserved and how it's like representative of prehistoric time. And then they're throwing their cigarette butts in the water. They're throwing, I don't know, they're putting stuff to poison the fish or like,
Yeah,
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 just
yeah.
the damage they
Carrying the
did.
baby alligator on purpose with the horn.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe the ecology part of that, like be nice to the environment, maybe that wasn't the message. Maybe I just got that completely wrong. I forgot about the cigarettes and the
No, I
yeah, the
think you're
fish.
right. I think be nice, like, be if you are trespassing on this area, like, don't do that,
Yeah.
because I think that they're saying that I don't know, I would say that the monster is justified, and it's not really, the monster is just like living, and there are these intruders who are coming and messing up his
Yeah.
territory and doing all of these things that are really damaging to the environment. And meanwhile, I was reading an article in Bloody Disgusting, and they were talking about the affinity between the monster and Kay, especially during the underwater or her swimming sequence that we keep talking about, where you have are there the other characters David and Mark?
I think so.
Okay.
It can be for our purposes.
They can be. They are not the Richards. When they are swimming, they're wearing their scuba suits or their aqua lungs, and they're wearing this, modern equipment. Versus Kay, who just jumps off the boat and she is just enjoying swimming in the water without equipment and really clearly like she's not there to collect rocks from the bottom. I mean, she is, but like when she's in the water, she's not collecting rocks from the bottom of the ocean. She's just enjoying being in the lagoon. And the monster sees, that the monster sees not just like a beautiful woman, but sees, like, to him, it's a creature. This creature who is just like beautifully moving through the water, and but also like they have an affinity in their aquaticness and their relationship to their surroundings.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. That kind of reminds me of King Kong and was it Fay Ray and the relationship between the monkey and the ape and the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, there seems to be an awful lot of the women and the creature sort of thing. Huh.
Yeah, and even this is another thing from the Bloody Disgusting article, but they were saying that this scene where they've got the monster captured in the cage. I keep calling him the monster. The Gill Man. They've got him in the cage, and someone is saying like, well, he could have killed you too. He could have attacked you too. And someone, I think Kay says, well, he didn't. How did they evoke or manipulate the audience's fear? I think there's definitely this fear of the unknown, or like the possibilities that come with as they're learning more about science, about evolution, about I don't know, the origin, like the possibilities of, they're playing on the fear of the unknown.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. No, that's exactly right. There's a concept that's like sort of a I don't remember if it's psychology but it can be applied to. There's a sense of the other, and
Mm-hmm.
the other is like something we don't know, we don't trust, we don't understand. So there's always this other that's potentially out there that we kind of in the back of our heads are always aware of. I think it's probably connected to the flight or fight sort of instance. If the other isn't that scary or frightening, then we'll stay and monitor the situation. But if the other is like too horrifying, we're going to get out of there. So I think they use that very well because yes, he is. And I'm using he because there's a man inside the suit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the monster. I think because he looks human, he gets a little bit of sympathy, but he is completely different from a human. So you get a little bit of that other. But you're right, he doesn't attack unless he's provoked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of sympathy there.
Nania, what did you think?
I think you both brought up a lot of really great points. I also think, and I don't know if this was intentional, but I feel like there's almost like an anti-colonialist narrative too, because you have these people coming to Latin America who don't speak Spanish, or at least not well, and then they bring in their science and they just start doing whatever they want, and taking advantage of like the native people. And like, even though I was afraid there was going to be a racist scene and there wasn't, but I still felt they were like kind of condescending and patronizing to the people who helped them. And I felt like it was kind of a good allegory for like, hey, maybe you shouldn't come into places that you don't belong in and start throwing your weight around and like doing whatever you want to the land and the people and the creatures that live there, because if around and you might find out.
Yeah,
That makes perfect sense.
for real. Okay, shall we rate the movie? We usually rate it, give it a rating for scariness and give it a rating for overall quality. Um, I can go first. I'm gonna rate the movie for scariness. I'm gonna go ahead and give it. I'm thinking like, what would a one be? Because I don't know. I'm gonna give it a two. It might be like a 1.5. Which is so interesting. I'd love to know what people would have rated it at the time it came out. I'm going to give it a 1.5. It is not scary to me, but there was good tension building, and I could definitely see it being scary. For overall quality, I think I'm going to give it a 10.
I actually, yeah, I'm going to go with the 10 for quality as well. And for the scary, for people who are afraid of water, it's probably a little bit higher, but yeah, I agree, maybe a 2. Yeah.
Give it a 2 as well for scary. I feel like for cinematography, I'd give it a 10 in terms of like how much I liked it. I think I'd give it like a 7, 7.5. I thought it was beautifully done. It isn't usually the sort of movie I'd watch at all, which is surprising to me because I really, really enjoyed it. So I feel like that speaks to the overall quality of the creation of the movie. And it's aged fantastically well, which is also incredible.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I love. I think a lot of the old Universal monsters have aged very well. And there's always I mean there's a big thing about now getting all the old horror movies, cleaning them up, getting them out there again in sets or whatever. Yeah, this one they did a fantastic job cleaning it up. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, where, Kelly, can people find you or your work if they want to get more of the Kelly experience?
Um, well, my books are all on Amazon, so that's easy enough. I have a website. It's kellyAevans.com. So my middle name is Anne. I couldn't get kellyevans.com because someone took it. So kellyAevans.com. And on the first page, I've got stuff about me. There's news about what I'm writing next. There's a whole list of all my books. And if you click on the books, it takes you to Amazon. But if you go over to like the medieval page, there's all kinds of stuff in there that's gross. And the horror page has gross stuff as well. There's a page about like 10 facts about the Black Death, and there's I write satirical articles as a lady called Lady Matilda during the Black Death, and she gives out sort of like advice about how to entertain and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that in there.
I
And then
saw
on
that
my
today.
and
I
my
was
social media though, no, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. But I want to talk more about the medieval advice you have on your website because I saw that page today. I was looking to see if you have your books on audiobook because I would like to listen to them as audiobooks. Um, but yeah, I thought it's funny that it says, "Are you a young wife and find yourself having to run a manor for the first time? Or perhaps you're an old pro wanting to keep up with the latest trends in medieval food, decorating, and pets? Or a single gentleman trying to understand today's 14th century woman? Look no further. Lady Matilda, renowned for her talent in languages, embroidering, and figures, has compiled all her favorite ideas and recommendations for managing your medieval manor in one handy place."
I had so much fun doing those. There's still a couple of the articles that I haven't put proper attribution for some of the pictures I've used, so I'm still going through it and working on that. But I had a blast. I think the main page has a picture of me dressed as a medieval woman sitting at a desk and writing. It was so much fun doing her. And again, with a lot of the stuff I researched, a lot of the stuff she writes is researched. So whenever she recommends a cure for the Black Death or what you might want to do to help your guests through their Black Death, that's all real. Like it's all actual stuff they tried. And yeah, it was hilarious to do.
I'm sorry if I cut off when you were sharing your social media handles.
Oh, yeah, no, on the homepage of my website, it has all of my social media, sort of links to go in there. And I mostly spout nonsense. Every once in a while, I'll spout something, smart, but don't expect it.
Um, Before we wrap up today, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't. I don't think so. I mean, all your questions were amazing, and I've got a lot of stuff in the back of my head that I now have to go and relook at because there's a couple of ideas I got from talking to you. But no, it's been great. That's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for talking to us. And I'm so glad that you wanted to be on the show, not just because, I mean, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, but because I am delighted to have discovered your books. And I am so happy to have watched this movie that I probably would not have watched otherwise.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad I could. I'm so glad you're enjoying the books. And yeah, I'm always trying to drag people onto the Team Gilman sort of like sort of like group. So yeah, as many people as but I actually make people watch this sometimes when they come to my house.
Thank you to our listeners. You can find us on Instagram at horror/stories_pod. If you love horror movies and want to analyze them with us, there is a link to an interest form in our Instagram bio. In our upcoming episodes, we are really looking forward to talking about folk horror, especially movies from around the world, from beyond North America. So if that sounds fun to you, or if you have a movie suggestion, we would love to hear it. Anything else, or should we conclude?
No, just thanks very much for having me. I've had a blast talking to you. Anytime I can actually sit for, an hour or two with a captive audience and talk about horror, it's awesome. So thank you so much for having me on.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and follow Kelly on all of her platforms.
I am so appreciative of you. You are the best.